Welcome everybody, and thank you all for coming. This is a very exciting time for the county as we move forward and determining what the future is going to be as far as commercial and development and how we're going to involve everyone in that process. Ladies and gentlemen, this is just the start. I mean, this is not a complete plan at all, but we want to involve you from the very beginning of this thing if we can. I know that our consultant organization has met with the various entities, in Woodbury County, all the cities, the chamber, and involved in the initial planning. We want to keep you up front on what's going on here. I think that the presentation this afternoon made by Terry Lutz is going to be very, very interesting. We want your input as this presentation unfolds. You don't have to wait until after the end of the presentation to ask questions or to throw some kind of an idea out. And remember, we're all here to learn. We're not here to just sit and listen and take all of this in. No question is going to be disregarded. Every question is important because we're looking at the future of this county as a whole and how we can collaborate as a total body, if you will, a private sector, public sector, in developing, a plan that is going to be well displayed and unfolded for the future of our residents of Woodbury County. And I think that once we get into this and you look at it, you're going to see that there's going to be opportunities for every community to benefit from what we have going on right now. So I want to welcome you all. Thank you for coming. And right now I'd like to turn it over to Mr. Terry Lutz. He is our consultant with McClure Engineering, and he can start it out and make a few preliminary remarks. And if I said anything that was not correct, Terry will correct me. Thank you all.
Okay, yeah, as George said, my name is Terry Lutz. I'm with McClure Engineering Company. Quick background on myself. I'm a civil engineer. Been in this business for about 35 years. Served as mayor of Fort Dodge for 4 years. I ran as a one-term mayor. That's one promise I kept because as soon as my term was over, I moved out of town, moved to Des Moines about 5 years ago. Work all over the state in projects similar to this, although this one has been very unique and quite challenging for the last 3 or 4 years. But really some good things going on up here. And so we're really pleased to be a part of it and honored to be a part of what's happening here because the region here has absolutely once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to really think different and do some things differently here, probably than you ever have had in the past. When we first started, it started with what was called the Liberty Park Project, and that's kind of how I got involved in this thing. And then through that process, as that was kind of winding down, when CF announced their expansion, created a great opportunity for the county to look at doing some things differently. And so there's, for some reason, there was a lot of controversy around when CF came and the urban renewal district that was created and the TIF district and so forth. And really, there's no reason for anybody to be too upset, I don't think, over all the stuff that was happening then. But what the county has continued to try to say and ask us, basically, is how do we manage all of the stuff that's coming from CF? And essentially, what's coming is a huge amount of new tax base, of which the county has created an urban renewal area around CF, which is done all the time with industries by cities and counties. And that gives them the opportunity, not that they necessarily have to, but it gives them the opportunity to capture new tax increment that's being generated from that investment being made by CF and take those tax revenues and ask the question, where can we best deploy those tax revenues to make our region the most competitive? And that's a great thing to do. Now, and in that process, CF, by the way, was very gracious, in my humble opinion, in terms of while they got significant tax abatement over the next 20 years, CF was very gracious to the county, and not just the county, I'm talking about cities and counties, in that they didn't ask for a lot in terms of their tax base that they're generating. They didn't ask to have a lot of those monies come back to them. So the deal CF got was, I think, a very fair deal. The deal that the county in general got was a very fair deal. And it's leaving enough, it's actually leaving very significant tax dollars to be used by the county in a good, conservative, diplomatic way to invest in stuff in the region to create more job growth and more tax base and just more overall economic development. So from day one, the county has asked us, how do we go about planning this stuff? How do we do this? Because they've never been in this situation before. So what we have suggested, and actually we had several conversations with CF very early on, before any dirt was moved, about the use of CF TIF revenues. And CF was very consistent in their message to us in that, hey, we just want to make sure that the region is prudent with our tax dollars and we want to see everybody benefit. So hearing that from CF and having the supervisors say, well, you know, how do we go about doing this? What we've done is put together a scope of work and a plan, a master plan is what we're working on, that really looks at, to kind of boil it down, we're really putting together a 20-year capital investment program, looking at where are the highest priority projects in the county that we could invest in that might create other opportunities for growth. And then also how much of the tax revenues coming in from CF should we just let roll into the general fund, into all taxing bodies for property tax relief. The county has made it very clear from day one, they want to do both. They want to see property tax relief generated, and they also want to identify key infrastructure projects in working with the the cities in, not only in this area, but all the cities in the county, looking at ways in which if they can leverage their new TIF revenues coming in from CF and partner those up and leverage those with other city, state, and federal funds, we can grow the pie even greater. So that's what we're doing. We're in the process of doing the master plan now, and I'll kind of roll through this. And this is kind of the purpose of the study, was really to work collaborative, and they made it very clear from day one that they wanted us to reach out to all of the cities and the private sector to make sure that we identify where these growth opportunities are, because everybody kind of has their own idea. At the end of the day, the purpose of the study hopefully will be a planning tool, because we're going to have this 25, 30-year capital improvements program like most cities might have that say, hey, here's the highest priority projects, here's what they cost, here's when we can afford to invest in those projects, and here's when the new TIF revenues start coming in, and we can match those capital investments with the revenues as they come in and do some good long-range planning. So when we're finished with this report, by the way, our contract is to try to have the report finished by the end of the year. We've been working on it now about 3 or 4 months. And we've met with most of you, we've met with all of the cities individually. Some of you look familiar, some of we haven't been able to get in touch with yet. But our goal was to go out and meet with every city once, which we did, and the county, and get ideas on projects. We then took those, built a financial model, put that together, and then we've come back to everybody a second time to review what they told us the first time. And that's kind of where we're at in the study. As we go on here a little further, well, let me talk about the study area first of all. We've got the city of Salix is located down here. This is I-29 going north to Sergeant Bluff up there on the right. Sioux City corporate boundaries on the left. Up in the far left corner you can see the Sioux City Airport right up there. And so everything bounded in black here is the study area that we've identified for what we're doing. This is the UP rail line is running right here. So essentially from the UP rail line west to the river, south of Sergeant Bluff and Sioux City, and north of Salix is the study area that we've kind of focused on. Again, the concepts that we're going to look at today could be used anywhere in the county. They don't necessarily need to be in this area. So we established some key strategies in terms of how do we go about this planning and what are we really trying to accomplish. The first strategy was to assist CF by using TIF that CF will generate to invest in infrastructures to help CF be successful. since they're the ones generating the revenue, they've asked for some assistance on a couple of projects, and the county has agreed to give them, it's about $1.6 million at this point. Even though the TIF, the new tax revenues, won't be coming in until 2018, the county has found a way to finance some projects and look to rebate some money to them in the future of the new tax base that they're coming. So that was the first use of the TIF that the county has already agreed to do. Then the other strategy would be to create a balance of using new tax revenues, some for property tax relief, and then the infrastructure investments as well to promote the growth in the region. And that's kind of a balancing act, and we've taken a couple cracks at that, and you'll see that in a minute here. And then the other strategy is where can we leverage new tax revenues by investing in projects that enhance existing investments that have already been made to get the quickest and greatest return on those investments. Each city, particularly Sioux City and Sergeant Bluff, have made significant investments in infrastructure already, and Sioux City already has an industrial park that's fairly successful. So obviously, if we can invest and enhance around those existing infrastructure components, it's probably likely where we're going to get the greatest return on our investment. I-29, huge capital investment, and there's an interchange that everybody has said they'd like to see. That's leveraging existing infrastructure with new infrastructure where we can probably get a pretty quick return on that investment. So our approach to the study has been to interview the community leaders in all the cities, and the Siouxland Initiative has been involved. We've talked with them. In fact, we gave this same presentation a couple weeks ago at the Siouxland Initiative. We haven't completed this yet, but we intend to do a comparative analysis of neighboring states and counties to look at their tax structure and their taxes to see what we're actually competing with. Probably go out around a 100-mile radius of the region here to look at that. And then so today what we're here to do, again, the study's not finished, we're in the middle of doing it. We're here to get your input so we can take this input back and continue to refine the study. Now, here's the opportunity that's being created. Oh, here we go. Well, I'll just point. If you look at the taxable valuation of the unincorporated areas of the county, you strip out all the cities and just look at the unincorporated of the county, in 2015, essentially right now, it's just under $1 billion. That's the taxable valuation of all the unincorporated areas of the county. If we assume a 1% growth rate, just organic growth of that existing tax base over the next 20 or 30 years, yeah, you can see this 1% growth rate here. And then if we add to it just the new taxable valuation that we know is coming on the books over the next 25 years, primarily from CF, but there are a couple of others that are included in here. CF would probably be 99% of this. Essentially, we can project out here in 2028, we're going to see a 42% growth, 1.42 billion over 1 billion by the year 2028. And when CF is fully, when all of their tax abatements are gone, it'll be to 1.85 billion. So we know right today, barring some big thing that might happen to CF, just based on what's happening, the county's taxable valuation will grow by 85% at a minimum over the next 25 years or so. And so herein lies the available potential property tax revenues that can be used for investment in infrastructure or investment in going to property tax relief. When you look at it on a dollar basis, the last slide was property tax valuation. If you look at the annual tax revenues generated from that growth, here in 2018 is when the real ramp up starts, so we're still 3 years out on that. But when that starts cranking up, I think after about 10 years, it'll be generating $6.1 million of new tax revenues every year coming into the county. And by the year 2038, it's $13.8 million of new taxable revenues every year. And if you were to graph this out further, that line would probably start to go straight out, so you'd be 13 million every year and so forth. So CF will be paying a large amount of property taxes in the year 2038. So again, this graph represents no new growth over what we know is already on the books coming online over the next 25 years. So if you add all those up over this 25-year period, it's $130 million of new tax revenues coming into the region just from CF and a couple other smaller companies that we're trying to manage. So this is really what it is we're looking at, and how can we best deploy that $130 million? Because the goal is to make this red line even go higher. By investing here, we want that red line to go higher. Not only investing, but also offering a competitive tax structure. Capital investments, again, we've been out and talked with everybody, and you're going to see some of these here in a minute, but we've, well, let me just stop real quick, and I'll show you kind of where we're at with our planning that we've done to this date. The first thing we looked at, everybody see that okay? It's a little tricky to see from that far away, and at the end of the meeting, if you want to come up, we'd be glad to talk about this some more, but get you oriented. This is the UP rail line. This is I-20. The river's over here. North is this way on my drawing. And so we've got Sergeant Bluff, Sioux City Airport, and Salix down here. So the area that we've looked at, again, everything west of the UP rail line. And essentially what this thing shows is kind of a land use overview. And what we're saying here, fairly straightforward, this is fairly consistent with each city's master plan or their comprehensive plan. Sergeant Bluff is looking to create some residential development that would be here. We haven't color coded this a different color yet. This area here is intended to all be more commercial around this new interchange. This would be roughly where the new interchange would be located. So we would see commercial use around the interchange like you see on most. And then as we get down to Salix, we're showing some residential and commercial happening along the Port Neal interchange and the Salix interchange. Pretty straightforward. And so what we're doing is allowing each city to kind of grow this way on this side of the interstate, and then reserving this middle area for industrial use. This is a big area. This is like 5 miles long or 7 miles long across here. So a lot of land. And so again, we're bookending, if you will, kind of an industrial zone with both cities growing towards that, and then obviously they can both continue to grow to the east. As you go west of I-29, a lot of this land, well, here's the existing Southbridge Industrial Park that Sioux City already has. Airport sits here, Southbridge is here. City's invested a lot of money in getting rail into here. And so we envision, and this is consistent with the city's plan, this remaining industrial, and then we've put this industrial as well. So we're really looking at almost everything from here remaining commercial and industrial, heavy industrial type use. Can't see it from where you're sitting here, but probably around here, here's where CF Industries is located. We have created, and we're calling it an industrial buffer. They've indicated they would like to kind of be left alone and a lot of space around them to protect their boundaries. So we've kept that as an industrial buffer zone and showed industrial use across there. In general, that's kind of the land use we're looking at. As we get into how do we serve that, well, this one next. How do we serve that with infrastructure? We're not completely finished with this yet, but we've identified infrastructure that's in this area. Again, we've got Sioux City, Sergeant Bluff, Salix down here, UP rail line. Sioux City's new water plant sits about right here. There's a large 16-inch water main that comes all the way down to here, and then I believe it runs off to a 12-inch over to serve CF. There's a sewer line, there's a pump station right here that pumps sewage from here back up into the city. The rest of this area currently is unserved with sewer. And so we've started to look at how could we get water and sewer completely to serve this area. A couple of ways: you could bring water up from Salix to the area. We could extend water from Sioux City this way. We do think serving the Port Neal interchange with water and sewer is a fairly high priority project. We think we'd see some development happening around there. Again, this shows where the new interchange might go. So that's sitting here, and we show kind of a long-range plan water loop that would come all the way around this area with water. And sewer is fairly straightforward. A couple ways we could serve sewer. Initially, it might be the cheapest thing to bring sewer down this way in towards the Salix wastewater treatment facility. That may need to be expanded. Or it could be expanding this pump station and pumping some of this sewage back this way. Long-term, if a big wet user came along, they're probably looking at some kind of a pump station here, pumping it back to the Sioux City wastewater treatment plant because of the investment that's been made there. So we've looked at that. Again, don't have any final plans, and our goal will probably not be make final recommendations. We're just identifying the alternatives. Growth will always drive where the infrastructure decisions get made, and so that'll come kind of down the way a little bit. So in talking with everybody, as we've met with the cities, we've identified some projects that have risen to the top in terms of very high priorities. The first one being the new interchange. We're showing it in this location. The first step on that is completing what's called an interchange justification report. And that's in front of the cities right now. They're reviewing that to see if they want to sign on. We've got kind of a cost-sharing agreement to fund that IJR. Again, that thing would, if the interchange was built, that would feed into the industrial area that we talked about right through here, and starts to kind of bookend the industrial areas in between there. So that's a very high priority project. Sergeant Bluff had a road, they call it the South Bypass Road, that's very important to them for industrial purposes, so we've put that on the high priority list. And we're not 100% sure with Sioux City yet, but we think there's maybe some opportunities for some land acquisition assistance here, and maybe even some rail extension at the South Bridge Park. If you followed in the paper, they just recently got a lot of grant money to extend rail in that area, so there may be an opportunity to even do a little bit more there. So those are starting to become kind of the highest priority projects, and so this down. So when you start, very good, I'll just leave it there for now, so I need it later. When you kind of add them up, these are what we've identified, just to sum them up, as the high priority projects. CF Industries project, again, funded about $1.6 million, that's already done. Legal fees to do what we're talking about doing, we've budgeted some money for that. The I-29 IJR, land assembly for industrial sites, and then some utilities around Portland. Those are kind of the highest priority infrastructure investment projects. When you add it up, we've got a list, a wish list, if you will, of about 35 projects. When you add them all up, and we've kind of bracketed them in 5-year increments, 0 to 5 years, there's $28 million of investment. County's portion would be about 8.7. Priority 2 projects, 88 million. County's portion about 18 million. And the last priority project about 25. So when you add them all up, there's about $142 million of infrastructure investments identified right now from all the projects we've identified. And we're showing county portion at 37.2, and I'll show you how we got to that here in just a minute. When we first looked at this, we did an iteration that said, what if the county used the new TIF revenues and matched 50% of the cost of infrastructure projects and 100% of land purchases? So that's what this looked at. Again, we've got this in a financial model to see how this would impact. The red line illustrates the same red line I showed you a couple slides ago, that is the revenue being generated through CF over the next several years. The yellow, based on those assumptions, of 50% cost share of infrastructure and 100% cost share of land, you can see when we build that into the model, we are clear out into 2031 before we have any revenue left for property tax relief. And the last time we met with the county, we didn't have this pretty of a graph, but we had the numbers. We had not done a second run on the model, and we all agreed this is probably too much investment in infrastructure and not enough left for property tax relief. So we looked at it again, where we have reduced the county's participation from 50% down to 25% to share in infrastructure cost, and from 100% down to 50% to cost share land purchase. And when you look at that, instead of 2031, we can start offering property tax relief in 2023. Keep in mind, real tax revenues don't start till 2018. So we're about, we're 5 years, in this model, 5 years after CF's tax starts rolling in, some of the proceeds could be used for property tax relief. And as you can see, over time, if you look at this and do the number crunching, this yellow represents there's 37.9 million that I had back, 37.2 million that I had on this slide. So out of the 142 million identified, the county's in at about 40 million. And then offers this back for property tax relief. Is that clear? Anybody have any questions on that before I go on? Okay, so with that, what we were working for is wanting to identify the capital needs, look at the property tax, look at the revenue stream coming in, and from that, use this then as the basis to form what we're calling a TIF use policy. By the way, does anybody in here, let me just describe what TIF is, because I'm just assuming everybody understands it. If you're not in public finance, it doesn't mean anything. TIF stands for tax increment financing. If I have a piece of ground that's valued at at $10 for property tax purposes today, let's say it's an acre of ground, pays maybe $1 a year in farmland in taxes. And all of a sudden I come and put a building on it, and it goes from being valued at $1, maybe $100 up to $1 million. There's new tax increment that's created on that investment. And that's called, well, it's new tax increment. It was paying $1, now it might pay $100,000 in taxes a year. So the increment is 990, would be whatever that number is, $99,000 and $99,999 would be the increment. Okay, law allows cities and counties to create an urban renewal area around here and create a TIF district within that urban renewal area that allows that governing body to capture, if you will, that tax increment to be used for investing in projects that drive economic development. People have abused that over the years, but the intent was to use that increment to invest either back into that project or into slum and blighted areas or economic development purposes. And the only way you can use that tax increment for those purposes is if you create debt to improve whatever it is you're trying to improve. With no debt, that